work on the project for a while there due to the COVID pandemic. Our lawyer was working on hiring another engineer, had trouble finding one for a while, but now John is available again, so that's good news. I'm meeting with the two of them next week to move forward with the primary next objective for the project is that silent title acquisition. So you may recall that's the two little small properties. So the timeline there is they're looking, I think it's about 3 months after we meet next week, and post that we're looking to develop through those properties. Hopefully there's no opposition by any unknown landowners that we know of at the time. If there's not, then we file with the courts to make that legal, that we're able to go through there.
So a question on that. So that hasn't been done yet? Because I know that that step was stated a long time ago.
Correct. It's been about a year-long process, and it's been frustrating for us as well. First, I think our consultant as a lawyer took a little too long to work on that himself. He had to end up getting a real estate lawyer to help him. And then he started trying to work with John Christofferson. That wasn't working out once the pandemic hit. Like I said, he tried to find another engineer. That wasn't working out. Now John's back on the project.
So thank you for this. Just a question while we're on the topic of the Brad Freeman Trail. I know the construction prices have really changed, at least in recent. I'm not sure. Are you and your, the people that you're working with, are they still positive that the funds that are approved are capable of actually still finishing the product?
That's the bonus for this project, is that State Parks has been working with us, and they still are, to build the project themselves. Bob Marciniak may recall, and you may have from previous meetings, that we've also had the committee and the way the grant's written to make it okay for us not to have to go out for a competitive bid and to be able to just work directly with State Parks to build the trail.
State Parks has been building trails and building good trails and doing quite a bit of it. And I have to compliment them on their efforts on trails. And they're the builders for this.
Great.
We worked with them on the design of the trail as well, so it's meant to be a type of trail that they're used to building and similar to what's around the lake already. Okay? So with that in mind, the other big issue was permitting. Again, has taken a long time as well. It's a difficult thing with consultants sometimes. North Star Engineering was running that aspect of it. Their environmental consultant ended up not working with them anymore. Once I came on to the district last year, I approached North Star again. They had a new consultant that I started working with at the time. They started the process and then got to a point where I had mentioned, they said, I think we need to go back and have new topography shot because the trail may have changed since the big spillway flood. I noted to them that at that point I ended up calling some of these permit agencies myself and asking, what were these requirements instead of going through the consultant, and was able to find out that if the trail really didn't change that much, and if you ever walked it, it's really rocky there. It's hard to imagine anything happening. So if it hasn't changed much, then the existing drawings we have, the existing topography should be fine. So I ended up telling North Star, it's okay. I think we can move forward as is. I'm going to try to start submitting these permits myself instead of paying the consultant. I think they wanted an extra $30,000 you saw in that last update. I'd started that process. It is turning out to be a little bit more work than I can handle. So I've convinced them to go ahead and submit as is, that it's going to be okay, and keep those costs within the existing fees that we have, or the allocation in the grant for their fees. It's about $5,000. So trying to keep this within budget as much as possible. I think this one's okay as is for now. North Star is warning that there could be, once we do submit, it's the Central Valley Flood Control Board. They could come back and say, no, you do need more information of some sort. One of those items potentially is a HEC-RAS model. Have you guys heard of that type of? They end up having to. It's more detailed topography of the riverbank and the river itself to get an idea of when the flows come through that space, what type of difference would happen since the trail topography has changed. But since we're only moving a little bit of soil here and there, it really shouldn't change what happens there. So I don't think they're going to require that, but if they do, that would require more funding or somehow be coming out of that budget. That, and if there's any sort of contest for that unknown property, if somebody says that that is our property and we don't want the easement going through there, then it could take more fees from our lawyer. But at the moment, everything looks to be within budget.
I think you should get the tax collector to figure what the bill is on that if somebody comes forward, and let them pay the back taxes.
On that old property, right?
Yeah, and see if they want the property then.
I have a short question, if I may. Sean, there was a lot of environmental work done just upstream from that location that the previous redevelopment agency had done. That file, that document might be useful for you to have. I think it would take a search in the city records to find it, but the redevelopment agency did pay for a considerable amount of environmental work to be done on that section of the river from the diversion dam down, and I believe past the fish hatchery dam. The lady that worked for North Star actually did the environmental on that, so that might be something to have staff take a look, city staff find it for you. That
Okay.
might have some useful purpose for your trail.
All right.
Yeah.
I'll look into that. Thank you. With those two big components in mind, the permitting, it's all about permitting at this point, environmental and the silent title. If everything goes smoothly, we should finally be in construction spring, early summer.
Good.
Okay. I'll move on to the Thermolito Family Center at Nelson Pool. This is the project that we had a little more trouble. You may recall my last update in regards to budget and putting it out to bid. Since then, we were able to, in an effort to lower costs, we ended up putting demolition out to bid first, and it worked out. Our consultant had estimated that the demolition of it's basically the recirculation system for the pool would cost about $50,000. We put it out to bid, and the lowest bid was $10,400. So able to save about $40,000 there. Interesting too that the next two lowest bids were close to $50,000 and $62,000. So it's.
Are you sure that this low bid is a qualified contractor who's licensed and bonded?
We just talked about this at our board meeting last night, and they are qualified.
And they understand that there will be no $40,000 change order?
Correct. Yeah. I think it's one of the items we talked about, or one of the reasons I think possibly is that costs have just gone higher and higher and higher the more competitive contractors have become. And at some point, I think it's unfortunate that they know they can charge higher prices. We've seen it happen over the last 3 years and in the past as well. And so I think this contractor just had a little bit more realistic idea of what it may cost and not trying to inflate those costs like others.
Did they have the engineer's estimate before bid?
They did not for this project.
That's interesting.
That's helpful, yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, let's see here. One other change we've made to lower costs is there's new recirculating system equipment for the water play area. And originally that was to go behind the existing utility building that has our pool recirculation equipment. So our consultant was able to determine that we could fit it all in the existing building and so save on some costs of putting a structure or a type of fence and a cover around that system. So that's in the new drawings that are out to bid now. The project's out to bid. We had a pre-bid meeting today. 4 contractors showed up, so that's promising to see that we should be getting a competitive bid there. Bids are due on November 17th. At this point, we're still in the same situation I think we were able to add one of the elements back from the grant that we weren't before. So right now, we're not able to fit in the water slide, the floating play equipment, the bleachers, and the new fence. So to keep within budget, we have the rest of the project out to bid, which is primarily the renovation of the pool, the recirculation system, and adding the water play area. And we are able to improve upon the picnic area for the site. There's some ADA improvements as well, shade structure. But with the existing estimate, that's what we think we'll be able to keep in the project and again, this is a conservative estimate based on recent high bids for other projects. There's a chance that bids may come in lower, and we're able to fit in more of those elements. But at the moment, that's where we sit. You may also recall at the last update, I mentioned our district is willing to ask for another $100,000 in impact fees for our board to approve, depending on where these bids come in. So at that point, we'll be deciding if it's just to even make this base bid, based on where the bids come in, or if it's to add some of these extra items that are missing. I mentioned in my summary here that I know that's one of the main items to discuss about this project. And other than those potentially missing items, I'm not here to ask for any additional funding today. I think we should wait to see when bids, when they do come in, and what those prices are. And at that time, I don't know if we're able to hold a special meeting for the SBF committee to consider additional funds at that time, or if that's a consideration at all, or...
Well, I mean, that can be decided by this council, but just speaking frankly from where I'm from in my position on this, we had when this was approved, along with the Brad Freeman Trail, we had several worthy projects that were brought to us. And just the reality is we gave, you guys a large portion of those funds that were released. And for me, the way this has been handled as of yet has been definitely subpar, has been disheartening. And for me, it definitely will weighs on future funding, different grants that will come to us now, up through the SBF, being that it has taken so long, and then have a project presented and then stuff taken out of it, and then to come back and say, well, we've taken out stuff, but we want more money, because, I understand, over time, prices go up.
Sure.
So I just let you know from where I stand, how this is handled from here on out. Definitely, you're in the hole as far as my book goes. So to come back and ask for more while you're in the hole will definitely be not good.
Sure.
From my position.
Okay.
I definitely would love to see from here on out. I know you guys are doing a lot of stuff. You guys have had all the remodel. I know the amphitheater down at the Riverbend Park looks amazing. But we are here to manage the funds that we have let you guys have, and for it to be as of, I know there was turnover. You're newer. Mr. Murphy, stepped out after it was approved, and a bunch of things have happened between here and there. But it has taken a long time to get to where we are today, and it's almost like you're just now starting the project. So I would just throw that out to you that, I know that the Parks District has, I'm not sure how much money has been used, but I know there was millions of dollars that were released in insurance claims for the damage. And so I would just hope, in good faith, for us trusting you guys with the funds that we had at the SBF, that the Parks District will understand that and maybe pick up the slack for your own, not you,
Sure.
but the Parks District, the delay and, dare I say, mismanagement of the funds as of yet.
Sure. And to speak to those points, and these were updates that, the project has been taking a while, and we've talked about this a little bit in the past, as far back as last year. And I do have a representative of Melton Design Group with us today, Paige Gimbel. She's the project manager. I was frustrated with the timeline last year as well, and they had explained to me that they were working with a pool contractor to put these drawings together, and that the contractors, their consultant help was just not available as much as they would like to get those drawings done. I did push them as much as I could to get those done quicker. We were looking to have this done last season, and that was a big frustration for us as well. And I understand more time has passed on since then, and that's part of the reason, of course, the costs have gone up. I think they were higher even at last year if we would have put the project out to bid then as well. I don't think it quite would have fit within budget, but just a little bit more background on your frustrations there.
One thing that
Mr. Brandt?
One thing that bothers me is the county. And in my estimation, the trails in our community are a big, big draw to this area. And they're an economic force. And the county's involved, the city's involved, the district's involved, the water contractors involved, state parks are involved, and we've got to work together as a community to make these what they can be. We can't be fighting each other. I think, isn't some of the property city? I know some of the property's county. And then maybe the county will let us build a trail there. What? What are we talking about?
So, is there more presentation you have? Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see that. Mr. Pittman?
Yeah. Hi, I appreciate your presentation, Sean, and it's
Yeah.
good to see the project coming forward.
Yes.
Quick question about the pool. Will it still be useful for the swim team and the orcas and that group, or?
Yes.
Yes. Have they been involved in input for your activities and that?
They have. It ended up changing the theme of the water play area to be a little more orca-oriented or themed.
Okay.
Adding new swim blocks as well for competition. And
Good. That's as an old swim team parent, I got a lot of hours there, and I appreciate that. And that's a very useful pool for that purpose. And it also would be a great addition as they have, the invitationals where other communities come and visit other pools and visit this pool. It'd be great to see that happen, and the improvements would certainly shine. Adding to Mr. Brandt's comments, I do know that the county went along with the Explore Butte County group for another 10 years. Apparently, they're supporting that, and that their part of their purpose was to support what the Explore Group Butte County do is promoting the trails that we have. Not necessarily doing work on the trails, but they're exploring the marketing of that, which is a good thing.
Yeah, definitely.
That's a positive, but I agree with Mr. Brandt that the issue is a story that needs to be told, and I think we're all looking at some ways to market that story and get it out. One question about the family center: are in the upper arch, are those actually those shade structures? Or are they? There's a word that a lot of water parks use to call them where they have little rental units. Is that the concept there, or is that just?
that was the concept at the time. Can you forward to another slide or two ahead to the construction drawing? This is the old master plan that was used in the grant application. That's good right there.
Okay.
So after the master plan and the consultant looked into the construction drawings, the option to put the shade structures at the back of the pavilion, that grass area didn't make as much sense as putting them closer to the existing concrete. So they moved forward there. And the shade structures would be a future option there. I think the budget only allocated enough for the shade structure you see closer to the water play area at this point.
Okay. The reason I ask that is a lot of fun parks draw a lot of considerable income from the cabanas and those shade structures. So it might be something, I see you're pulling back from that, but it might be something for the future, because my understanding is many of the parks, that's a great revenue source where, and I want to say the unit deciders, which I take from another study, which are all the grandmothers, aunts, and mothers that make the decision to use that facility, look forward to having a place they can actually rent as their home base for the activities of the day. So certainly that's a great addition that could be down the road, but understand it's not cheap to build either.
Yep.
So thank you.
Definitely. Thank you, David. Yeah, other than the budget, construction is estimated to be complete this spring, right before swim season starts on May 1st.
Cool.
Thank you, Sean. One thing that I talked to Mr. Murphy on that he said he'd look into before he left was, the big need that we have for community is swimming. It was removed, and that's where the SBF comes into.
Right.
So we do have a lot of low-income families in Oroville, and he said he would look into, I don't know if that was transferred over to you, if you communicated that, but there was a commitment that was given to look into some kind of, I wouldn't say voucher, some kind of a price reduction for families that qualify as low income, so that, again, it's just making it available for all the community and not just those who have the means to pay for their kids to go swimming.
Right. He did not mention that on his departure. We're always juggling those costs, though, and trying to figure out, ways to make it more affordable for people.
Great.
Okay. Anything else?
I would add that one of the big problems in our recreationist area is if you have a boat, you have lots of places to go. If you don't have a boat, you've got no place to go. So this is one of those places that you don't need a boat to go to.
Right.
And I would strongly support this whole concept, because it's a great facility, and these improvements are well needed. So thank you.
Good point.
Yeah, and just on top of that, when all those projects were presented, from my memory, this was the first one that was approved. My memory serves me
Yeah, I
right.
think so.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And Mr. Chairperson, if the body were to so choose, when this project is complete, if the SBF wished to utilize it would probably be a very small amount of money they could subsidize the day use to the pool for those that couldn't afford the full cost. I mean, that is something I believe you could do. Summer scholarships, or I don't know exactly what you would call it. We'd work with our partners to develop that program, but I think we could provide the funding, and it wouldn't really be that significant amount from the SBF.
That's a great idea. Can we write that down in our?
I can make it happen if you want.
Well, I would add that as a scholarship program for both this facility and potentially the Fort-Bay facility for those things, because that's a great way to get our youth to involve, because it's sad to see the kids that don't even know where the fish hatchery is.
Right.
And there's a lot of those things in this community that I would certainly support that notion of an idea. So
That should include Palermo Pool too, I think.
exactly, yeah.
Thank you, Sean. And actually, this is our first time meeting you. My first time meeting you. So, did I remember?
No, I think we met in the past, but
Okay.
I was the representative for the Nature Center Trail
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
before.
Different hats.
Yep, exactly.
All right,
Way back.
Thank you for your presentation, sir.
All right, thanks, everyone.
thank you.
Moving on to regular business, we have a discussion number 4, SPF Program Specialist position.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairperson and committee members. This is a fairly straightforward staff report. What we're doing in this staff report is reducing the number of hours and the cost of the SBF specialists that we currently have working on this project. The reasons behind that are twofold. One is you're running out of money, and in order to make that money last and to keep this body alive, It's necessary to reduce the drawdown from the annual allocation on that. Right now, we allocate approximately $100,000, $98,000 a year for the position. We need to reduce that so that we can continue this project longer. So the way to do that is to reduce the number of hours from the person that is holding the position. Now, that person that is working for us will not lose their job or will not suffer any sort of a pay reduction or anything like that. What we will do is we will absorb them to the general fund of the city and assign other duties from the city to them for the other 50% of their time. So they will continue to work, continue making their wage. There'll be no significant impact on them other than different work assignment that they will be assigned to. The secondary reason for this is the amount of work that is necessary now for the current state of the SBF. There's a minimal amount of grants that are out there, and a lot of the grants are very slow-moving, if not static. So it doesn't require a lot of oversight. It does require a lot of monitoring and collecting of information and also necessary paperwork, which we will continue to work on and continue to do a better job on. But it doesn't require the day-to-day oversight that would be necessary if we had a very active SBF fund with more dollars coming. Right now, as I understand it, and Mr. Marciniak can correct me if I am incorrect, is I believe we only have $35,000 left that we can draw down. Okay. How much is it?
Well, the committee.
From DWR?
150,000 in reserve.
No, how much money do we have left we can draw down from DWR?
Oh, from DWR, about 35,000.
Okay, so we have the $35,000 drawdown. And what would be our fund balance at this point, Mr. Marciniak?
About 400,000.
Okay, so we're at the $400,000 mark, and I don't, despite being constantly told any day, I don't share that same optimism about the license. I think it's probably quite a few days before we see any more dollars out of that unless something changes. So we have to be really careful with the monies that we have now, and we have to make this last for as long as possible. At $50,000 a year, we can get 8 years out of this. I personally don't think that's long enough, but that's what we have. So anyway, in order to get those 8 years, we have to stand the line where we're at with the dollars that we have and reduce this position. So that's what we are asking you to do today, is to authorize a reduction of it from a full-time position to a half-time position.
My question is maybe to you and to Mr. Marciniak is right now, with not much going on and not much funds that we have to do anything with, would you say that it's even a half-time position?
I think it's going to be necessary to have at least a half-time position as long as we have the grants out there. Once those grants have wound themselves down and up, then we're going to have another discussion about reducing it even further.
So you're talking about the current grants with like the Parks District and what
we have we have a couple with the Parks District. We have one with the stage. We also have one with the veterans and one with the rowing club or the aquatic center. So we have several that are out there right now, and some of them are, they kind of ebb and flow. I mean, they'll be inactive, then all of a sudden they just kind of hit heavy. So we do need to have that person here to monitor that, to verify these things, because it's easy to get behind on these, and then all of a sudden there is a tremendous amount of work to get us out of that hole.
Committee member and Mayor Reynolds.
Thank you. I would like to know how we arrived at this pay scale for this person in this position.
It's a pay scale in the city. The SBF doesn't set the pay scale.
Okay, thank you.
So my additional committee member Pittman.
Thank you. I'm in kind of agreement with this because I do think that knowing the knowns that we know today, this is a reasonable step to take. And if we do have more work, then we can always bring this back up to a different level if necessary. But I will tell you there is, and I've had communications about interest for a variety of other recreational activities coming forward to the city. One would be the South Forebay for drag boat racing. I'm told there's I know it was canceled for August, but it sounds like it may happen before the end of the year. So there may be some needs there that I don't know about yet, and it may be something that fits the economic benefits to the community that may come about. And a couple of things we'll talk about is there may be a need for that facility to have an environmental document for racing activities and other things like that as a suggestion. So, but I would say we'll hold it at this level, and then if that becomes apparent, then we'll come back and adjust to whatever that need is. Plus, we have some other interested activities around the waters that I can't announce right now, but it'll be nice to see. So I think do this with a caution and try to extend out as much as we can, and then let's hope for a Project 2100 issuance.
That's great. And one second, but my concern is this: the government is really good at, because these funds are specifically to be used towards projects, and the funds, I understand that position is needed, but my concern is that the rest of the funds and whatnot is just used to fund a position when that isn't the purpose of the SPF. I am grateful that we have the resource of Mr. Marciniak and his availability to come in at a needed basis. And I would love to see this if he's, I haven't talked to him about this, but to see this position more lean in that direction to somebody like Mr. Marciniak or Mr. Marciniak to come in at it, since it's an ebb and flow position, that if there's no work, to have somebody receiving funds just to wait, just in case, for me just doesn't seem, it seems like bureaucracy at its finest.
And I understand what you're saying. The part of the allocation, though, is also to cover the cost of what it is. We have hard costs as the city. So if the city chooses to absorb those costs out of its own general fund and pay this, then the city could do that. Or if the Feather River Parks and the city wanted to split those hard costs, because we could do that. Otherwise we have to use the available funding in the SBF to cover all of those hard costs. I understand what you're saying. It's a really weird position that we're in here. But either way, even if we have Mr. Marciniak doing that, we still have hard costs. You still use our finance department. We still issue checks. We still handle the money. So there still is cost, and we will bill the SBF back for those costs. So it's, unless we get direction from our governing body to do something different. That's, so we could probably, if you wanted to have a different talk about how to fund this at a next meeting with Feather River and the city, not, of course you are the SBF, but talking from your individual perspectives of what we can do to share these costs to reduce that to the fund of the SBF, we can certainly do that. But as with city council members, you're going to need the direction of the body to do that, much the same as I'm sure the Feather River Parks and Rec board members would need the direction of the board to make those kind of commitments. Sean and I, we're just cooking at this barbecue. We just need to know what you want.
Maybe just a suggestion, totally is pulling out of my hat at this point. With the projects that we approve in the future, just an idea to have an added cost on the side of that project, say a $750,000 project is also going to estimate for the position, so that if, and there'd be an agreement there with the project or the person that we do the contract with, that, hey, this is the timeline, this is our estimate as far as, because when you, if this, like just not to pick on you, Sean, but to say the Feather River Parks, if this were to drag on another 4 years, we have a person in the back that we're paying for, waiting for the person to get their act together. And so there should be maybe something put in writing of this is the timeline we're looking for, so that there's allocated funds that are given for our project manager. And so it needs to be done within this timeline. Otherwise, fees or whatnot, put in there so that there's an agreement of, hey, listen, you can't drag this on for 20 years and us expect to have, Bob or somebody else in the back.
And what we do, it would be similar to an example that I could provide would be the housing department. They get an administrative cost for each grant that they receive, and 10% of the grant is for administration, whatever those administrative costs may be, whether it's salary, overhead, electricity, paper clips, whatever is necessary to administer the grant. So as we move forward in the future, we can certainly look at different ways of funding these grants and doing things like that. The only thing that I would caution you on is if you did, 10% of $3 million worth of grants, all of a sudden now we have this glut of money that we have sitting there that was not the cost before.
Sure.
So we just have to be, like I say, each one's going to be different. Each cycle is probably going to be a little different. We just have to be flexible enough to move and meet whatever the needs are. I mean, because I certainly understand what you're saying. Bureaucracy shouldn't, eat up $1 million of the SBF for the sake of having bureaucracy. So I absolutely agree with that, and there is work to do in that area for us.
Thank you. Claudia, did you have something?
I just had a question.
I want to recognize Claudia.
I'll hobble up here. Is that it?
It's already on.
Oh, that's all I saw, a red band. I was just remembering, and I wanted to ask Bob, back at the beginning, wasn't it half and half city and half SBF that paid for your position? And you spent half your time on the city? Am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah, it's actually.
Which is kind of moot now, because I think you're all agreeing to that.
It's
But
actually, in the staff report, for 10 years, the city paid for 9 years, the city, or the SBF paid for half. The first year, the SBF paid 100%. While because the position was new, had to be developed, there were reports, the Regional Fund Strategic Plan for one, we were doing the White Water Study for another. But I just wanted to kind of piggyback in one quick thing to the chairperson.
Bob,
There
could you
is a-
step up to the microphone that way?
Why don't you get here, Claudia?
Well, just so it's recorded.
That way Mr. Grover can hear you as well.
here's the line, Bob. Right
And
there.
I was just surprised that Claudia didn't come up like usual to say she agrees with me.
Hi. Okay, I'm sorry. Thank you, Bill. And I was always good about reminding people to talk into the microphone when I was the SBF coordinator. There is a sunset clause on every SBF agreement. So generally, it's 1 year. And then they have to, if the group, such as Feather River Rec, and actually everybody that got a 2019 grant has come back and asked for an extension. So you do have within your ability to control it from turning into 10 years or 1 year or 5 years. When I first started, there were grants that had been made prior to my starting. None of them had a sunset clause. And we had one that it actually took 6 years for $5,000 to finally materialize and get finished. So you do have that. So you, as the committee, you have the final word. So you say it's expiring a year from now and they don't have the project finished, they have to come back. And of course, they should do what Sean is doing and what was requested, coming and giving updates. And I will say that each of the current grants that we have, I think with the exception of one, has provided information about where they are. And at a previous meeting several months ago, you all extended all of their grants for an additional year. And it was pretty much COVID related, that they just, we didn't know if the world was stopping, staggering, stumbling. Probably stumbling is the right word. But anyways, you do have the final word. So that's the important thing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good.
And attached, to kind of jump in for Bill for two, I did a spreadsheet that shows what, the daily, weekly, monthly, as assigned tasks might be for this position. And, I've been here for about 3 months, averaging 24 hours a month. But it does need a little more work than the 24 hours. That's just, I'm an old retired guy and happy to be doing 24 hours a month. But, okay?
Gotcha. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
I have to just say for Bob too, just we've been very grateful to have Bob. I mean,
Yeah.
that's we were in a situation and he's been very helpful to us. And
Yeah. Thank you, Bob, for your continued service to this community. Mr. Committee Member Pittman, I see your name on the thing. Did you have something to say?
No,
Okay. And then also, Committee Member Brandt, your name's on there.
Yeah, you say if the things stay the same, we're running out of funds. Now, I was involved in the relicensing negotiations where the $1 million a year was determined. And at the time, we also got $5 million for Riverbend Park. Now, the rest of the money that's come in has been dispersed by this committee. I don't know where that money came from, why it came, when it came, why it stops, when it stops. Now, I know the water's still flowing. The water is flowing. Somebody's getting paid. And we were talking about $1 million a year, and they've probably met that to this point. But now we say it's going to stay the same. There is no money, and they're not going to give us any money, but they're going to still take the water. I don't understand that.
Well, Mr. Brandt, commission, is it are we a commission or a committee? Committee member Brandt. I apologize. The monies that came in were in advance on the settlement agreement. There has been no license issued, so that money was an advance that we received. The dollars that were available for that advance are what is expiring. We have not been getting $1 million a year as of yet. I realize that is what is believed to be the part of the SBF agreement, what we will be receiving once that license is here. Unfortunately, that license has not been signed yet, so the advance that we are getting is what is about to be used up. And if something isn't done differently, such as an amendment to the SBF or some sort of a change in the current agreement, it's going to remain that way until such time as a license is issued. I mean, now, I don't know as though there's nothing that Mr. C can do about that or anything else. Everybody's kind of waiting on what they're going to do in Washington and when they're going to issue a FERC license. So, I mean, as much as I know Eric would like to do that, he lacks the authority or power or anything else. So, I mean, I don't want to beat up Eric over this. It's not anything that, our local DWR is doing. It's those that hold the power elsewhere that aren't doing the things that are necessary in order for the money to flow through the SBF.
There you go.
there you go.
You're saying we're accepting the fact that they can take the water for extended years and not increase the amount of money they're giving us. They're going to subtract the money that they give us in this interim, and they get free water from the time they started this until FERC issues a license.
That is currently the situation that you have. Your only other alternative would be to either get out of the agreement or litigation.
Well, I'd say we should get out of the agreement. This isn't a good agreement.
Committee Member Mr. Fowler.
I'm sure Eric or Bob Marciniak could elaborate further, but I believe when the license was signed in 2007, or was it 2008? We had a set funding structure of an allocation of so much per year, and we've pretty much exhausted all that. That's where we're at now, correct? Mm-hmm. Is there a summary that's available, an accounting of that maybe you could give to us or email to us or speak to it now?
Well, I won't do it completely from memory, but if you actually go to the City of Oroville website and go to Government, and then go to SBF, you're going to find all kinds of information that details every penny that has been received, every penny that has been spent. Also, information about each of the projects. Just to kind of correct what you're saying, I shouldn't be correcting, but to augment what you said, Mr. Brandt, they're not subtracting anything. They agreed to give a little over $61 million, including the upfront money for Riverbend Park. And that money, for the most part, in the 12 years since, or 13 years since the agreement was signed or issued, is pretty much exhausted. And I think that's one of the reasons that the recommendation from the city administrator is to reduce funding to the SPF program specialist position. But nobody is going to subtract anything. At the end of the day, if the contract was signed next month for 50 years, we'd still have $50 million coming in. Is it enough? Probably not. But gosh, 13, 14 years ago, a whole lot of people seemed to think that it was. And they signed an agreement, and I'm kind of, saying the same thing Bill is saying. Your choices are to withdraw the committee or the city as the administrator, or to have litigation. Neither one of them makes a whole lot of sense for anyone to walk away from a potential $50 million. So, and this is sort of sidestep from what this particular item is. This item really is about the cutting the funding of the SBF to the program specialists. And the next item, I think you kind of jumped into your next item, which was this discussion, but they are somewhat related, a whole lot. So, okay, but anyways, go to the city webpage. It's accurate. It's got all the information. And if you're still, you need any questions or anything on it, I'm here till at least the 15th of November, as far as I know. But I'd be very happy to sit down and meet with any of you and talk about it one-on-one.
So basically, the amount's
61 million.
61 million, not 50 million.
Yeah,
and so they've
correct. Yeah, and I think there is some confusion with that.
Yeah,
the agreement was 50 million, but then there was about 11 million, which was upfront money. Because I think whoever on the other end of it, probably the attorneys at DWR and State Water Contractors, were well aware that this was not going to be signed in 6 months. I mean, we've been on a 6-month stay of execution for 13 years right now.
Committee Chairperson, could I bring us back to the item at hand and get a just pause this conversation for a second, and then we'll roll back into that. But if we could just get the item number, I think it was number 4, cleared up, and then we can move into the next conversation. I'm sure everybody has more to say and more questions.
Yeah, great. Yeah, absolutely. So we're looking for a recommendation for the funding on the reduction for 50%.
Yes, sir.
I'll make the motion to approve the recommendation as stated in the agenda, reduce the SBF funding for the SBF program specialist to 50% or less of salary and benefits effective December 1st, 2020, and 100% of all expenses related to administrating the SBF or to provide direction. Well, actually, the SBF, that's it. Motion.
I'll second.
Mr. Fowler.
I'll second.
Push the button.
Now you got to push
they're
the
going,
button.
No, the screen. Touch the screen.
Got to vote.
Thank you.
Yeah. No,
There you go.
we didn't give directions when you got in here.
The motion carries with 5 yeses and 0 nos.
Great. Now we're moving on to the discussion of the funding for the SBF.
Now, Mr. Chairperson and committee members, we can resume the conversation we were just having. So, I'm not sure if it was Committee Member Fowler or Brandt that was ready to go.
Okay, so, Mr. Marciniak, can I ask you a question? Can you come up to the mic for me, please?
Mr. Chair, I had a question or a comment and one more.
Okay.
Okay.
So, you mentioned 400 in reserves.
400,000,
Right.
roughly.
So, of that, can you just, for the sake of discussion here, describe as far as are those in all just one fund, or are there, certain ones that are committed to certain projects, or, can you just break that down for me?
Sure.
If I can help with that, Mr. Marciniak, I believe what the question that you're getting at is those are unrestricted funds. Those are not allocated or appropriated toward any project. Because we have more dollars in the
Right.
fund, but they are encumbered with projects.
Yes. However, of that roughly 400,000, the committee previously had said that they did not want the reserve to drop below 150. So there's 150 in the reserve fund, and 140 was established in case somebody came forward that wanted to borrow money from the SBF. Of course, the SBF would have to issue a NOFA indicating that funds were available to be borrowed. So 290 from roughly 400 leaves about 110,000 unencumbered. Okay, does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Any questions? All right.
And the only other comment I had, I sent all of you an email this morning regarding the date of the signing of the Regional Fund Strategic Plan, which is the, we like to call it the SBF Bible. I had April 22nd, 2020. It was actually April 22nd, 2010. So it's been in existence for 10 years. And it has been updated within the last 3 years.
Mr. C? Thank you, Mr. Marciniak.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to reiterate something that Bob said about the website, and just wanted to commend whoever came up with the idea for that website because, oh, there we go, it was Bob, okay. Because it is a great resource. It actually identifies, all of these costs, a listing of all the projects that have occurred over the years. So it's a great place to go if you want, just to answer Mr. Brandt's question, about the funding. That's all there, with a listing of all the projects over the years. So, I don't think anyone. I can't believe, Bob, you imagine we'd be sitting here this long into the future and not have the new license yet. But it's so nice to have that history, there. So I just commend you. It's been a valuable resource for me as I came in, several years ago now to this committee, just to kind of get caught up on where things were. I'd hear things from time to time, but I didn't really see the full picture. So it's a great resource. And as far as the funding, I know it's confusing. It seems like at least once a year we have this discussion about where the funds came from, where they're going. And I couldn't answer the question any better than Mr. Legron and Mr. Marciniak as far as where those funds were derived from. When the new license issued, there will be that $1 million a year. If it's a 50-year license, of course, it's a prorated. If you read the agreement, if it's a 45-year license, it's a little bit less than $1 million a year, and 40-year license, and it goes down. So if it's a 50-year license, it'll be $1 million a year.
Great, and so, thank you. Do I have any speakers on this? Any committee members have questions?
I'll go.
Mr. Pittman.
Yeah,
Committee
thank
Member
you.
Pittman.
I appreciate that, and Committee Member Brandt, I certainly appreciate your letter, and the comments there are, right on task. I think at this point, I'd be happy to hear that the license 2100 be issued tomorrow, but that's not real. I will tell you, though, in my own version of this, I think it's time that many members of the community start making contact with FERC. FERC is holding this community hostage for economic development for whatever reason, and I don't care what their problems are. They need to get their job done. And I don't know if Eric has an update currently with FERC, but I think it needs to be a first-person case. In fact, I would actually invite FERC to actually have a committee meeting here in Oroville. I don't care where, just have it here on the ground on this, because I don't believe at this point they actually understand us. They're in their world of whatever they're doing, and their world is not our world. And it's time that they have a first person, and I certainly suggest maybe your letter being one of those items that FERC sees in hand, and I would love to see them personally here. If not, I certainly as a committee member can make my own contributions to FERC and have that discussion. I would ask maybe staff to do a little homework and give us the contact numbers of FERC and who the commissioners are and that kind of thing so that we individually can work on that issue. So just my suggestion.
Good.
My recommendation for we have 400,000. So the item here is receive the summary and to provide direction. I think that's the point of discussion right now. Just the thought and idea that I have would be to divide the 400 in half, and instead, since there's not much interest on borrowing the funds, my recommendation that we can discuss here and shoot it down if you want, but to put out 200 for RFP? No.
NOFA.
NOFA.
If you're looking to,
Notice of funds available, yeah. Not request for a proposal. What's that, Mr. Marciniak?
we would have to bring this item back at
Right,
another
just
meeting.
providing direction.
Correct.
Right, we couldn't release the NOFA today.
Correct.
But that's my recommendation that we can maybe discuss, because I would hate for 400, all of 400 just to be used on administration, as much as we love administration, but the funds are meant to go out to the community. And so if there's not interest in borrowing, then
And I know you know this, but I'm just going to remind you that puts a life on the SBF of 4 years.
right. Well, if in 4 years, or 4 years, actually a project happening for me is better than 8 years of sitting on our hands. Sure.
Well, and that's being pessimistic too, because could be completely wrong, and the license could be signed tomorrow. Could be in the mail. I mean, so we'll see. I mean, but that's, I'm paid to be negative.
Yeah, just again.
That could happen. We could go out to the mailbox tomorrow, and there'll be a 10-inch thick document in there. I will have a heart attack if that happens, but I hope we'll get some advance warning.
But yeah,
before
I would be really discouraged at the government process if $400,000 was sat on when this money is directly supposed to go out for projects.
Okay, that is, we will bring an item back to the next SBF committee for direct.
I certainly would be in favor of that. That's a great idea. I got to remove myself from the queue.
Anybody else have any ideas with the 400? Mr. Fowler, I see you getting ready to hit the button.
It's not working. There we go. Let's see the money spent. Sitting around collecting dust and being eroded doesn't serve anybody.
And 4 years from now.
I would like to see it
Sorry.
used for the river, though, or directly to the river, and not some side project.
Well, I believe our
Same page.
highest nexus is along the river projects geographically. So any project that would come, the closer to the river, the higher value it has in
It
terms
seems
of.
like we're having better focus with our river,
Yeah.
and a lot of thank you to a lot of people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree, and I'm just going to piggyback on your tail, whatever, how we say, we're going to hop on the tail of the piggyback or whatever.
on that. Dovetail in.
Cross, Greg.
Lighting on the trail down there, since we got the Brad Freeman, now with the goats and whatnot, I think now is a great time to add some lighting along that trail, since there's a lot more attention being drawn to the trail. This money's been supposed to be used on the nexus of the trail, so adding the safety and security of lights and whatnot, really finishing it off, possibly putting a slurry seal on the whole thing, so it's nice and beautiful. There's a bunch of areas of the sidewalk that has been eroded by roots. So it makes it difficult for certain, scooters and whatnot, little kids or skateboards to go on there. So to polish off the path would be a great idea in my opinion. Mr. Brandt?
I want to compliment the city on getting the goats in.
Yeah.
I said at our board meeting, we need to hire a goat tender and buy a herd of goats and have a barbecue in the spring.
Yeah.
So, good job. But I think our safety committee on the trails needs to meet.
Yeah.
And we've got to really put an effort into making them safe.
Yeah.
There's tremendous use of the trail,
Yeah.
Right.
through the park particularly, but up and down. And when it's improved, there'll be more use. But we've got to do all we can. One of the priests that we had at St. Thomas had been here a month or so and drove his bike down the trail and ran into a naked woman. Not the kind of thing we want going on. But we're doing better cleaning up Riverbend as far as getting the people out and getting the brush out and clearing it off so you can see what is there.
Yeah.
And
So,
I want to take this time to pass some pictures around. I know Eric probably hasn't ever seen this, and Scott, maybe you haven't.
sure.
But those that don't know what we lost,
Yeah.
and tell me what you think that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Maybe we'll move that one to the end here, but let's finish off number 5 before we get to this, but I appreciate this.
Okay.
So with the direction, is it possible to do, it sounds like we're on a census of putting out a NOFA for half. Would it be the mind of this committee, and would it be within our reach to say a NOFA specifically, hopefully in regards to the trail, the Brad Freeman Trail, or does it have to just be a blank NOFA?
I think that it's within the committee members' authority to limit it to that area if you so chose. What we would do is we would bring it back at the next SBF meeting. The SBF would direct staff to release the NOFA and put conditions on the NOFA. And how you would condition it to it is you would probably open it up to any and everything, but how you award points for when the NOFAs come in is you set that this is our primary focus area. These are the areas of focus that we would like. I think that one thing you may want to consider looking at too is the trail that Feather River Parks is doing. See what the width of that trail is and see if, if it's just going to be a walking trail or if it's going to be as wide as the trail currently exists. I mean, we have to, I don't have the detail of that trail. It may cost more money to make it wider because, it would really be nice to have a trail that a gator could drive up and down all the way to the bathhouse area from the Riverbend Park area. So I don't know what the plans are for that.
Would that help for security, or what's the purpose of that?
Well, I believe that not only help for security, but usability of the trail. I mean, it makes it, so that it's easier to bicycle and do different things through there. And security comes from people using the trail. The more people we can get down there. We currently have a plan in the city where we're going to be doing several things, and lighting is part of those things that we are going to be doing down there. So that is something we can certainly share cost on and things like that. But really, the only ones that would be doing lighting on the trail would be either the city or the Feather River Parks putting in her grant request on it. So,
Okay, Mr. Committee Member Fowler?
Yeah, so my understanding, the grant for the trail that we've been talking about earlier, you can do a gator on that, and I'm sure Sean can come out and give us more specifics. But you can actually drive a truck on that trail because our staff does that. Or has done that.
well, I'm wondering about the connection to. Right now, you can't drive a
To
truck
the bathhouse.
Right, that
Right.
gap in between, is
Under the
that going to
bridge.
be of the same width or?
I
don't
believe it is, but I'm sure Sean can elaborate with better details.
Existing plans are 6 feet wide, and it's a crushed rock path.
So I think that would be adequate to,
Or-
but I don't know. We can look and see. We just that last little piece right there is really super critical to that trail. I mean, we have to make that connection.
And I would agree because, as you know, that's where we have a lot of our problems and trouble. Underneath the Green Bridge up to the bathhouse. Huge issue after issue. So,
Well, if you do that too, some other things for consideration for the SBF committee as well is, how do you make our community walkable? Right now, it's really difficult to get over to the Green Bridge. If an access point from that trail to the Green Bridge could be made, you have now you could actually bicycle all the way around Oroville if we had that connection. Right now, you have to go up and, at your own peril and try to get through the roundabout. But anyway, there's a lot of things that can be done in that area. It's a really challenging area, but it's also a really neat area if you start connecting things together. So it's just something to look at. But yes, we can bring back a NOFA for you. You can set your guidelines for it, and then we can move forward for that at the next SBF meeting. Or if you wanted to have a special SBF meeting, we can also set a special one and do it then if you wanted to do it sooner than, I believe, the December meeting.
Mr. Chair?
I'm sorry, January.
Yes, just something else for everyone's consideration, a couple of years ago, we did have that strategic plan document that was put together, and that has a lot of recommendations for potential projects too. So I just wanted to call that to everyone's attention. That could even be something to suggest for potential bidders to take a look at that.
Great. Is there any other comments on this item? Mr. Rossini?
I always have a comment.
Thanks, Eric. Yeah, it's actually called the Feather River Conceptual Plan, and the SBF paid to have that done. The committee at the time agreed that for the last NOFA, we used the Feather River Conceptual Plan as the basis. You had to be in one of the 6 elements of the plan in order to apply for a grant. And if memory, I believe, serves me correct, the intention was that we would use that on an ongoing basis because it does cover everything that this fund is supposed to be covering. So just to remind you of that again. And for anyone going to the website, it is in the SBF documents. You can click on the Feather River Conceptual Plan, find out how it came about, and actually see the document. And I think we do have a couple printed copies left. Okay?
Thank you, sir.
All right.
All right, you have your direction? Yes, I do. All right, now on to steering committee, advisory member, and staff comments. Starting with you, Mr. C.
Okay, this is report time, I assume.
Yeah.
Let's see. You have your. Instead of doing slides this time, I went ahead and just photocopied it. So you guys should have. Oh, Bob's going to hand them out right now. This is going just a summary of what I'm going to discuss. So first of all, I wanted to just let everyone know the current lake elevation is 731 feet. It is the lake is dropping a little less than half a foot a day right now, just kind of slowly creeping down. That'll continue until we get to a point where the rain starts and the inflow happens and the lake starts coming up again. Looked at the weather forecast for the next few days, and we will have gone through an entire October without any rain, which is always a little scary for me, but it's been a nice month. But
When?
What's that?
When's it going to rain?
When's it going to rain? Well, Kevin Dossie the other day told me that because the acorns are falling off a little early, they're big, he said that means it's going to be a wet winter. So I was going to let our forecast folks know that so they'll know which way to keep the lake this coming winter. But nobody can predict what kind of winter we're going to have. Okay, so let's see. The Feather River flows right now are at, in the low flow channel right here through Oroville, we're looking at 800 cubic feet per second. And with the releases from the Afterbay outlet, that's 1,650 coming out of there. So the total high flow release, so that's the river below the Afterbay outlet, it's at 2,450 cubic feet per second. And I did want to let everyone know that in order to maintain hatchery temperatures, to make sure the water's cold for fish spawning and rearing in the hatchery, we have opened the river valve outlet system to get some of that really cold water at the bottom of Lake Oroville. So we're using that to meet the hatchery temperature criteria. And okay, so the chart that's on the first page, that's just the forecast through the 5th of November, and basically just shows we're just slowly but surely dropping down. It's not a real exciting time of the year with lake elevations. The second page shows the forecast through the end of the year. And so we are about on track with the dark line. Lake levels at 731 right now. By the way, where it says those months on the bottom axis, that's end of month elevation. So if you look October, that means that was the forecast in the latter part of September where we're going to be basically about right now. And you can see where it goes through the end of the year. There's 2 lines. The dashed line is the forecast with where we have a 50% chance of being at that elevation or higher. The dark line is the 90%. So you have 90% assurance you're going to be at least at that lake level or it'll be higher. So the reason why there's the difference between the two is because typically this is when we start to get rain, and so it's really hard to predict exactly when that's going to happen. So, but I guess the one thing I really wanted to call to everyone's attention is something I always keep an eye on this time of year is where we're going to be towards the end of November, first part of December, and if it's going to be above the 711-foot elevation, that's when the lime saddle boat ramp will come out of the water. So I'm always keeping an eye on that. Looks like we're going to be able to make it. So if we get at least some rain in November, I think we're going to be good for lime saddle, and that we're not going to lose that boat ramp this year. Bidwell boat ramp is a ramp that goes and the spillway as well will not go out of the water at all this year. So that's good. So the third page is something I've been updating the SBF committee now for since 2017. We started implementing a series of recreation projects. This was in response to the spillway incident and the closures that occurred because of that, the recreation closures. DWR started a program of a bunch of recreation improvements around the lake. And this was primarily, the target was to address the impact of the time, which was primarily the loss of boat ramps and parking. So, and then, some trail use as well. And so just going down the list, you can, it kind of speaks for itself, but we get down to the Bidwell Canyon Stage 2 expansion. Just want to let everyone know, if you've been down to Bidwell Canyon, you're seeing a bunch of construction going on down there, so they're working on that project. We'd started that project at the end of last year into the first part of this year. They got chased out of there with the rising lake levels. So they're finishing that last 25% of the project that didn't get completed because of the rising lake levels. So we also have the project at Loafer Point. This is the new boat ramp facility. I would love to invite everyone to go out there and take a look at it, but it's still in a closed area. We constructed the project, and then we've been in these, seems like one emergency after another. It's currently being used by PG&E as a laydown area for support for their post-fire recovery efforts. They've been flying helicopters out of there and putting poles down and stuff. The boat ramp was out of the water, so it wasn't able to be used. But I just like to be able to have some kind of a ribbon cutting or show it off, because we have a brand new boat ramp facility up there, and very few people even know it exists yet because it's been in this closed area. But we will, at some point in the not too distant future, be opening it. And PG&E is supposed to be out of there in the next couple of weeks. We also are starting a new project coming up in about a month and a half or so, about a month actually, the second stage of that project. So there's going to be a lower stage boat ramp as well. So this is the new Loafer Point boat ramp facility, the stage 1 boat ramp, parking lot, and restroom facility. That's all completed now. And then there's going to be an access road that's going to connect that boat ramp to a lower stage boat ramp. And so that's the project of the lower stage boat ramp is going to break ground in, like I said, about a month or so. They'll be mobilizing it and getting out there. So I'm looking forward to that project as well. So it will be, when we're done, we're going to have a 2-stage boat ramp facility, and we're going to take that one down as far as we can. So, the downside of low lake levels, of course, is always, the impacts on the existing boat ramps, but it does allow us, when we have a construction project, to just take the ramp down that much further. So whatever the winter allows us this year, we'll take the boat ramp down as far as we can. And let's see, so are there any questions about the recreation projects?
I have one. The Enterprise boat ramp, how far are you going to take that expansion down? Is it going to go down to 700 foot, or do you know?
I don't recall off the top of my head. I just don't have that number. I should have brought my backup information for that. But I don't think it goes down quite that far, but I could be wrong.
Well, I know that the insulation, it's pretty high right now, and it goes dry real quick.
Right, and the idea was to extend that, to a further area. We're going to have to build a new stage. There are a lot of cultural resource issues out in that location, which, certainly affects where you build it, the options you have in order to build it. So we are working through that right now.
The reason I bring that up, I know during holiday events when Loafer, Bidwell, and Lime, and they were all full, that was the go-to ramp. And I actually was up there, and there was 100 people there. It was crazy. Right. I didn't ever think about being the overflow ramp, but it gets quite a bit of use. I was very surprised.
Well, and hopefully, this new Loafer Point facility is going to also really serve to assist with that, with all the additional parking and boat ramp lanes. So, and another thing that's nice about the Loafer Point boat ramp is the fact that it doesn't launch right into the marina like Bidwell does. Right. So people are going to have a much shorter ride to get out into the main body of the lake.
Yeah, that's a good deal. Thank you.
Sure.
Eric, who do you talk to about? You look at the amount of money you're spending there, and it's wonderful, the things you're accomplishing, but how do you get Lakeland Boulevard entrance into the trail system and the diversion pool? How do you get that priority marked up along with?
Well, this package was put together as a result of the spillway crisis. So that the whole idea was to address the impacts that happened during that time period. So that was what these projects were selected. When the new license is issued, there is a project that's identified there for Lakeland. That was part of the agreement, and so we're going to be turning that into a day use area that's going to be down on the water, on the Lakeland side. So right now you have to park about half a mile away from the water. We're actually going to punch a road through and have improvements, car top launch ramp, picnic tables, all that right on the water's edge.
The spillway, losing the spillway affected that area.
It did.
Well, that's what this was for? When it affected?
Well, again, there was a prioritization done. We worked this out, and this was the package we came up with. I will say, Sonny, that we have another project that has been delayed because of some permitting issues. We're going to be replacing a power line on the Brad Freeman Trail that actually runs through that area, through the bike tunnel and everything, and that project is going to punch in a road. So it's actually going to get us a road. It's not going to get the other facilities, but we are actually going to have a road once that project's been delayed now for 2 years. But it's I kind of see it as an advancement on that project. We made sure that if we're going to put the road right where we need it for this future recreation project. So.
Super.
So, I'd like to say it was for, specific for the recreation purpose, really for this other thing, but we made sure it's consistent with what's going to be the future projects.
Good.
Last, and I know we're dragging this meeting on probably longer, but just to throw a bug in your hat or whatever you call it, a feather. Anyway, the area right in front of the spillway, there's often people park there, and it's not very safe because it's just off the road and it's just kind of gravel. Is there any thoughts or discussion about expanding that out, making it more of a paved, with security so people can actually safely park right there, right in front of the spillway on the road?
During the spillway event, there, of course, there was a lot of interest. People wanted to watch the construction and stuff, and so there was a lot of discussion about that. The long and the short of it is no. We looked at several different versions of that, but it's not a good place to have an observation point right next to a highway right there. So it's that portion of the road is owned by the county, not by DWR. DWR's section of the road is further on, so we don't own the property there to even do something like that. And a lot of different things were talked about, but it's also not a safe place when we're in a big spill event, which is typically what draws a lot of people down there anyway. So it's something that our law enforcement folks have not wanted us to develop to encourage people to go there. But it is a turnout on the side of a road, so we can't we DWR can't just say, okay, you can't park there because it's not safe to stop and look. So I guess it's a long answer to say no. We decided against.
Makes sense. Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. C?
One quick question that I might add, and just as a thought pattern, I know during the construction of Spillway there were remote cell repeater sites, cellular trailers added for the construction work in there. Has there been any thought about adding cell coverage to the lake and the recreation facilities?
There was a tower that was put in there by the visitor center, and I know that covers part of the lake. But as far as DWR installing a tower, no, we don't have a plan for that.
I'm just thinking it might be a great conversation to have with some of the providers, because I know when people get on the lake, they want connection, they want communication. It may be something to have either off of an opportune site or have a discussion with the vendors to see if they'd be interested in installing something along those lines, because there's a huge amount of utility work going on all over up there, but with the cell issue and communication, Wi-Fi, so on and so forth, it might be a worthy effort to add that to the Lake Oroville recreation area, not only for the visitors, but also for law enforcement and security and patrol. I'm just thinking of somebody in a boat stuck and they need to get, their home. If they don't get cell coverage, they'll probably sit out there and spend the night, and hopefully somebody will pick them up on the way in. So I'm just wondering if there might be some discussions with local vendors, whoever that may be, that I know we have a couple different towers here that we're leased out to, I don't even remember who it's to, but it might be an advantage for not just DWR, but also for the recreation folks using the facilities.
Okay. Well, I have a meeting with Parks next week. I'll bring that up with them, because there may be some discussion about that. I just, I haven't been
Right.
involved with a lot of the, lately with a lot of the reconstruction that's going on. But the, it's funny because with the ORAC committee, I think the first project that the ORAC committee ever got implemented outside of what was in the recreation plan was having a phone line installed to the spillway boat ramp. This is 94 or something like that, back before cell phones had been invented,
Right.
Or at least in regular use. And I just remember what it accomplished that was to actually run a phone line to
Right.
to that that site. It got washed out in the spillway crisis,
exactly.
but anyways,
I'm just thinking for the world of technology that's coming before us now, having that kind of capability. I know Bloomer has a huge cell repeater site, but I don't know if Bloomer services the lake facilities, and I know the upper reaches, it certainly doesn't, but it may be a good discussion to have, that I know the construction folks brought in portable cell trailers. I saw those, and they're using them on fires now too. Whenever you have a fire event, you're seeing a cell phone repeater trailer come up. It might be something to think about for fixed-based or temporary-based during the recreation component of the summer or something like that. So it'd be nice to see that come about. The same thing, I think, when we look at trail security for us, the trails along the diversion pool and all over. Now, when you get out in the valley, cell coverage is pretty good, but up in the reaches, and I know down at the dam, cell coverage is terrible. I mean, it's typically that way, so it might be something to improve in the future, especially along the trails. If someone's on a trail and they need help, what do you do?
If I could just ask a question.
One second, Mr. Fowler's in the queue.
Thank you, Chairperson. So I have a question for Eric. As of Tuesday of this week, I've been engaged in a symposium with the California Invasive Plant Council online. Our very first item of agenda was through the California Department of Agriculture. We actually have, through the Butte County Agricultural Commissioner's Office, a Butte County Weed Management Abatement Program, which I've been a part of for the past couple years. Not much has happened, especially this year with COVID. Nothing's happened this year, unfortunately. I've been pushing invasive weed species abatement for a long time. I've talked to Administrator LaGrone, and thank you very much for the goats making that happen. Sure. I would like the city to be more involved with Feather River and the county. Weeds cause fires. They have a fuel capacity. The riparian habitat, the destruction of the riparian habitat. There's so many things that weeds do that most people, including maybe even some of us, just don't realize. Now, I do know that there is a representative from DWR. I don't remember her name, and she might be out of the Sacramento office, but maybe she's working with you.
no, she works for me, Robin Carter.
I believe so.
Yeah, she works for me.
Is
She was at
actively
the.
up here?
Yes, she
working
works
on
here
it?
in Oroville, and she went to the conference that you're talking about.
Okay, great, wonderful. I would like to see more collaboration with DWR. I would like to see maybe quarterly meetings, and I don't know if that's going to happen for next year, but I'm hoping that it does. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. You could pass it on.
we do try to stay engaged in these local efforts that are going on. We have one of the programs when the new license is issued is actually a weed management program. So we have a plan that we're putting together, a draft plan at this point that'll be implemented when the new license is issued. And Robin's the lead on that. So that's why she attends these task force type meetings,
Right.
and stays. She's a member of the IPSI group. So. Again, it's one of these things that, it was identified back in 2006 about the importance of it, and, it's in the new license provisions.
I'd just like to remind, this isn't necessarily the forum for it, but since we all wear many hats, weeds do cause millions of dollars of economic disruption. Some way we're paying for it. And we need to get serious about partnering up and making sure that we're not spending as much money and we're all on the same page. So that's it.
Thank you. Do we have somebody here for the state water?
I'd just like to ask one question, if I
Oh, I'm
could,
sorry.
just
Correct.
real quickly. of Eric. Who's responsible for the after bay? Is that DWR's property?
Yes, so the Afterbay, DWR owns and operates the Afterbay. The Afterbay is part of the Oroville Wildlife Area, so it actually falls under Department of Fish and Wildlife Management. We have an agreement with them, and we provide funding for them to manage the Oroville Wildlife Area. We also, as far as the recreation law enforcement part of it, we have a contract. DWR has a contract with the Butte County Sheriff's Office to provide that service. So, Department of Fish and Wildlife, they have game wardens, they do have law enforcement, but they're primarily, going after fish and game type laws. I mean, they're state peace officers. They can enforce other regulations, but that's not really their expertise. So they provide some security out there. Then we have the security contract with Butte County Sheriff's Office.
And how about the forebay?
Forebay is state parks. That's part of the Lake Oroville State Recreation Area, and state parks has their own law enforcement arms. The park rangers.
Who operates it though? Is it a DWR part of the project?
Yes. So it's DWR operates the water facility. So the power plant, at the end of the lake levels, those kinds of things are DWR. But the recreation's Department of Parks and Recreation.
So what I'm getting at is, there's quite a bit of talk in this community, and all these ramps are great, but the vast majority of people in Oroville don't own boats. Everybody can get to the forebay, though. Is there any way that these projects that are in design, it looks like about $7.2 million, that money can be redirected toward the forebay for rooftop camping or something where people can actually access the water? The lake is not swimmable. It's too steep. It's a reservoir. It's not a lake. Is there something that can be done out there to redirect those dollars? Because these are all fantastic, but it doesn't really do a lot for the average people that live here that don't own boats. I mean, so is there any way that, like I say, we appreciate this, but can it be shifted possibly to put more dollars into the forebay area?
Well, again, these projects, originally, I know now we're 3 years out. It's hard to believe that, but from the spillway incident, but this package really was a result of that process. So to get these planned and permitted very quickly, we used the governor's executive order, which provided some waivers for certain, or streamlining of certain permits, CEQA, those types of things. So we went to FERC, received FERC approval again under this kind of federal and state emergency umbrella. So. That was really what approved this package of projects. So it would take a lot to undo that, to try to shift the money to somewhere else now. I don't think that would really work well for us. But I will say, we have a recreation plan that covers the forebay. That recreation plan, when the new license is issued, is going to have new projects that are going to be a part of that. And there's a whole process associated with that. And I think that would be the better venue to bring up those ideas and discuss those types of projects.
It's a really frustrating to see $38 million dropped into the lake and not a penny spent out there.
Well, I understand,
and that the impacts of the spillway
at the time
that was a direct reaction to the cause of whether it's mismanagement or whatever, the failure of the spillway, and you put it back into your project. You didn't do anything for the community, like making. And I'm not saying you, Eric, and I know I'm starting to sound heated. I apologize. There was nothing done out there where the average person who suffered the impacts of what went on up there can appreciate. These are boat ramps that go down, quite honestly, to nowhere. And we just keep building them and bigger and greater because we have capacity on 1 or 2 days a year. To me, as an average person who's lived here for a long time, like I say, that's great, but it's not really doing a lot for us. So, if you would just communicate that to those who do make those decisions, because we need more done for the average person, and the forebay is that answer. It makes us a destination where people can camp. I mean, if I wanted to go with my children, I certainly wouldn't take them to the lake to go camping and swimming. I would take them to the forebay where they could wade into the water safely. But anyway, it's just. Well, that's I understand what you're saying.
And I will say that this package was done in cooperation with the ORAC committee, the Oroville Recreation Advisory Committee. We took this to them. We did get feedback. Of course, everything was done in a rushed way. We had a couple meetings about this, and it was like, okay, go for it. Get this thing, get this going. So, your comments, I duly noted, and I think that's definitely something that we can insert, as we look forward in other construction projects. Again, this was a reaction to address the recreation loss that happened at that time, which was primarily parking, trails up in that area, and boat ramps. So that was the reason why we focused on those things in this plan. But we're certainly not done. This was just we got this package going right now, and we've got a lot more we're going to be doing into the future.
Thank you. I was asked to bring that forward. I just wanted to communicate.
It's good comments, and it's good for us as we're making decisions on where to direct our resources right now. We can take that.
Thank you, Eric.
Take that back.
Thank you. Do we, Member Pittman, are you?
Thank you. Well, tagging on to what the Administrator Legron mentioned, let's just say, for example, let's say we had a concessionaire that wanted to put a marina at the After Bay. Who would be the contact for that?
That would be DWR.
DWR, okay.
Initially,
Initially, yeah. Because they're the landowner, and then as a potential
yes,
issue.
and being part of the Oroville Wildlife Area, it actually falls under certain Fish and Game Code regulations. That's the reason why we have the issue with the speed limit on the After Bay. That was a relicensing issue, but it actually falls under Fish and Game Code as far as the regulations out there. So certainly we would bring Fish and Game in as well.
The reason I'm asking that question is I've been asked that question, and I wasn't sure, but I appreciate that answer. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Pittman. Do we have any representative from the state water contractors to give a report? No. Okay. So then the next one is the SBF Program Specialist Written Report. So those are all in our packet.
Just got one update.
Okay, Mr. Marciniak? That was the email that you sent out earlier?
Pardon me?
Was that the email you sent out earlier, the update?
No. No.
Okay.
At the last quarterly meeting that we had in August, I was directed to meet with the Fort Bay, what do they call it?
Aquatic Center, or
Thank you.
Feather River Center.
FRC, Feather River Center, had a block for a second, sorry, thank you. I was directed to meet with them. The meeting with them actually occurred today. The reason that it took so long is that you may recall that previous expenditures were not documented with proof of payment, and today I received the last item. So I did have a good meeting with Brad Cook, who is the new manager out there. He's been there for some time, but he has been now placed in charge of it. I've sent him a follow-up email, and I'm only mentioning this because what we'll need to do, the next step in this process, is to further discuss and either approve or pull back the extension that they were given, and also a revised budget. So he kind of has a small laundry list of things that he has to provide to me he said he was hopeful within the next week or so. Once I have that, then what I'll do is, Chairperson, contact you about, I think, a potential of a special meeting. And we could piggyback the NOFA into that special meeting rather than waiting until the end of January. And that's basically it. I appreciate the opportunity to help you guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Marciniak. So at this time, I'm going to call for agenda items, future agenda items for this committee. See no hands raised, nobody in the queue.
Well,
Committee Member Brandt.
I brought some pictures. Did they?
No, they're here.
They're making the rounds?
Yeah, they're over here, yeah.
Okay, I want everybody to be able to look at them, and
I'm happy I'm not in any of them.
I thought about that. I'm wondering where they're going.
and contemplate what we lost in this community from a recreation basis, particularly for the youth of the Oroville area. And granted, the projects that this committee's been able to support are wonderful for our community. supporting the Chamber of Commerce, the Downtown Business Association. All the things you've done have been wonderful, but they don't come close to touching the children's recreation, the youth. Just the community that I was able to grow up in was unbelievable to what kids face today. And I really think we need to get our act together and figure out what's going to be the best use of the funds over the 30 or 50 years when we get that, and make a decision on it. We're all elected by the people, and we should be able to make a decision on how those funds should be spent, but hopefully it will be concentrated on taking care of our youth and our lifestyle in the community of Oroville. And I'm very partial to water recreation. If they build us a $30 million water park, we couldn't afford to operate it.
That's why we're not doing it.
That's the sad truth. So we really need to be thinking.
Yeah.
And I guess it's not a whitewater course.
Did you have, and I agree wholeheartedly, Mr. Committee Member Brandt, did you have with that a future item that you're thinking potentially that we could put on the next agenda, or?
Well, this was just my thoughts, and I was just concerned about how the board as a whole felt about it, and whether we can get a consensus that we've got multiple worthwhile projects in Oroville and around Oroville that we can fight about from now till the day is done. But rather than doing that and divvying this out like, oh, gee, I can help you, and I can do this project, and I'll do that project, and I'm taking my time to do that when I know what's best for the community. Let's get it all together. Let's make the big decision and do something that's really going to put Oroville on the map and produce a lifestyle where you want your kids, your grandkids, your great-grandkids to grow up.
Absolutely. Mr. Fowler.
So continuing my last statement about the weed management program, you know, the CD, the California Department of Agriculture, funds Butte County or counties in general, and they don't fund very much. And usually that program is limited to what the Ag Commissioner wants to do. And there's plenty of very infested areas in Butte County, as you know, by all of the fires that we have. I'm thinking maybe we should have our own selective JPA weed management program strictly for the Feather River corridor. I know that DWR is doing some things, but it's not enough. And I don't know what that looks like, but I'd be happy to give a better description later on as an agenda item for January.
Let me tag on to that, if I may.
Committee Member Pittman?
Thank you, sir. The interesting thing, we have, I don't know how many thousands of acres burned. And this county obviously has probably the max or a total amount. How many acres are being replanted? In my career in 35 years in the fire service, I don't know any of the fires that I worked on ever got replanted. A tree, a weed, or anything. So effectively, we're not getting anywhere. We're burning stuff down and we're letting the vegetation grow and just become fuels again. Conversely, the Sierra Pacific, when they harvest a tree, lumber company, every tree they harvest, they plant 7 trees for every one they harvest. 7 trees for every one they harvest. Think of that ratio. If you build green, healthy forests, you won't have fire activity. So I will look forward to that discussion about some type of replanting program or something along the lines. I don't know how big it could be around here, but it might serve as a model for the rest of the state. You talk about fuels management, that's the topic right there. How many acres we burn and how many acres we replant doesn't match.
Yep.
Thank you.
Committee member Fowler.
So just to elaborate on that, that is inclusive of restoration work. So it's a full circle. And if you do the restoration work where you bring back the native plants or replace the planting, you're not going to have these invasive species take over because it's not a vacuum.
Right.
So that is part of the solution. And yes, that's exactly the kind of thing I'm thinking of, and more. I mean, there's a lot more we can add to that, but that's the concept I'm basically getting to.
Right.
Yeah. Any
Thank you.
other, go ahead. Any other future agenda items we would like to? Great, seeing there's no more agenda items, this meeting is adjourned. The next regular quarterly meeting for the Supplemental Benefit Fund Steering Committee will be held January 22nd, 2021 at 2 p.m. Thank you for coming.